A man who spent years working alongside the Liebherr family says the patriarch told him once that it is wonderful to have no shareholders, other than ourselves, to answer to. 30 people pressed like on that comment. It sits under a video about mining trucks, on a channel about heavy equipment, and it has nothing to do with hydraulics or horsepower. But it is the closest thing this industry has to an explanation for why some machine companies keep getting better and others quietly stop. Line up the companies that have taken ground from Caterpillar over the last decade. Liebherr, Volvo, Komatsu, Ponsse in the forests of Finland, Kubota at the small end. Technically, they have almost nothing in common. Different countries, different engines, different philosophies about how a machine should be built. Liebherr builds mining shovels the size of a house. Kubota builds compact track loaders you can put on a trailer behind a pickup. Put their ownership side by side, though, and one property repeats in every single case. The property has nothing to do with the country. 3 of them are European and 1 is Japanese, and the Japanese one is currently beating the Europeans in the fastest-growing category in America. Every one of them can afford to lose money on purpose for longer than 3 months. That is the trait. It is not glamorous, and it does not fit on a spec sheet, and it is the only thing that reliably separates the machine companies gaining ground from the ones defending it. You can see what it buys on a job site. A machine that takes 7 years to develop and then runs for 20 is a bad quarter and a very good decade. A machine developed in 18 months to hit a launch window is the reverse, and the operator finds out which one he bought, somewhere around hour 4000. Start with the clearest case. Liebherr was founded in 1949 in Germany, moved into earth-moving machinery about 5 years later, and is still owned outright by the Liebherr family, 2nd and 3rd generation. There is no outside shareholder anywhere in the structure. The group is deliberately split into units small enough that a decision can be made by somebody who knows the customer's name. Now think about what that actually permits. If a Liebherr engineer wants to spend 6 years on a mining truck drivetrain that will not earn a cent until year 7, there is nobody to explain that to. No quarter to protect. No analyst asking why research spending went up. Komatsu sits inside a Japanese corporate structure with cross-holdings and long horizons, and it went after autonomous haulage in the mines when autonomous haulage was a research project rather than a product. Volvo Construction Equipment sits under a group that built the world's first articulated hauler and then spent decades refining it, while the American market ignored the category. Ponsse was founded by a forestry contractor in Finland, who was unhappy with the machines available to him, and it is still run from the town he founded it in. That last one is worth sitting with. Ponsse exists because a Finnish contractor could not buy the machine he actually wanted, so he built his own, and the company still builds them in the same part of the country. A Finnish viewer put it plainly under one of these videos. "I am from Finland," he wrote, "and yes, Ponsse, every day." None of these are charities. They are all trying to make money. The difference is the clock they are allowed to make it on. Before we go further, if you run the iron or turn the wrenches on it, subscribe and turn on the bell. Now hold that against the pattern this audience keeps describing. In the comments section of this channel, Liebherr is the single most mentioned company. 18 separate people brought it up without being asked. Volvo follows at 15, Komatsu at 14. John Deere comes in 4th at 12, and here is the part that matters. Deere is almost never mentioned as a competitor to Caterpillar. It gets mentioned as the other one doing the same thing. One comment put it in 4 words that got 531 likes. Cat and Deere in shitifying themselves out of the market. Both companies have been sorted into the same category by the people who actually buy from them, and they sorted them there on evidence. The comment that drew 254 likes on this channel was about chief executives not thinking past their next set of stock options. The one that drew 130 came from a man who earned his own business degree in 1980 and wrote that the people driving this cannot grasp that destroying your customers is not a viable business model. Both of those came from people who have watched a specific kind of business decision arrive on their own job site. One viewer, writing under a video about mining trucks, drew the line more precisely than most analysts manage. Liebherr is and was an engineering company, he wrote, understanding the value of research and development. Caterpillar was an engineering company that turned into a bank. He is not saying Caterpillar builds bad machines. Nobody in that comment section is saying that. The channel's own biggest video says the opposite in plain language, that the Cat 320 is an outstanding excavator with a solid undercarriage and a proven engine platform. The machine is fine. What changed is the clock it gets built against. Komatsu makes the same point from a different direction. When the mines started asking for driverless haulage, that was not a product with a market. It was a research program with a cost, and the payback sat somewhere over the horizon. Komatsu spent the years anyway. Today, when this channel covers Canadian and Australian mining fleets, the comment sections fill with operators naming the replacement without being prompted. Komatsu is king nowadays, one Canadian viewer wrote. Another named the specific sites. Sparwood is Komatsu. Suncor moved to Komatsu autonomous trucks, and then to Hitachi. None of those people are quoting a press release. They are describing what is parked in their own pit. And once you know to look for the clock, the market data starts reading differently. Take the compact track loader, which is now the highest volume machine in North American construction. Between May of 2025 and April of 2026, the brand that sold the most new financed units in the United States was Kubota, at 27.1% of the market. The single best-selling model in the country was the Kubota SVL 75-3. John Deere finished fourth, with sales declining. Kubota is a Japanese company whose founder started out making cast iron water pipe in 1890, and which entered American compact equipment slowly, unglamorously, over decades, without ever being the exciting brand. Here is the part that keeps this honest, and it is the detail most videos on this subject leave out because it spoils the story. Caterpillar grew its compact track loader sales 18.8% year over that same period, on the back of the new 255 and 265 models. Caterpillar is not losing that category, it is gaining in it, which tells you the trait is not about nationality, and it is not about Caterpillar being incapable. When Caterpillar commits to a category over a long enough horizon, it wins in that category. The 255 and the 265 are proof of exactly that. There is a second reading of that number worth having. Caterpillar committed to compact, and compact is a category where the buying cycle is short, the customer is small, and the payback shows up fast. That is precisely the shape of Category A, 90-day clock permits. The categories the clock does not permit are the ones with a 7-year runway, and those are exactly the ones this channel keeps making videos about. Locomotives, autonomous haulage, electric mining trucks, forestry machines built for one specific way of cutting timber. The trait is about which categories a company is permitted to commit to and for how long, before somebody upstairs asks what the return looks like this quarter. There is a second marker that travels with the first, and it is easier to check. Companies with the trait tend to keep the customer relationship in the hands of people who can lose it. Liebherr's decentralized units. Ponsse driving every single new harvester straight out of the assembly hall into real forest before it ships. One viewer who was walked through that Ponsse line described the moment the engine is lowered into the chassis and said he left the factory wanting a harvester the way other people want a Ferrari. He is not in forestry. Maybe, the less you have, the more you are required to boast. Companies without it centralize that relationship, because a centralized relationship is easier to measure. Measure is the operative word there. A centralized service operation produces a number you can put in a deck. Response time, tickets closed, revenue per machine in the field. A regional technician who knows which of his customers is running a harvest window and turns up before he is called produces no number at all. He just produces customers who stay. On a spreadsheet, that man looks like an inefficiency, and eventually somebody optimizes him away. That is how you get a hospital in Germany, replacing every General Electric scanner with Siemens after General Electric swapped its regional service technicians for a call center. 403 people liked that comment on a video about excavators because every one of them recognized it. Caterpillar has run that same experiment in a category most people never associate with it. In 2010, its rail division paid $820 million for Electromotive Diesel, the company that effectively created the American diesel locomotive. Then, the Tier 4 emissions era arrived. North America built roughly 1,200 new long-haul freight locomotives, and more than 1,000 of them came from Wabtec. That is what the missing trait costs, stated in one purchase and 1 decade. The engineers in LaGrange, Illinois, where those locomotives are still designed, did not suddenly forget how to build a locomotive. What changed upstairs was how long anybody was willing to wait for the next one. Subscribe if you want more of these. This channel covers the real story behind the machines, the part the dealer never puts in the brochure. So here is the test you can run yourself, without a spreadsheet. Find out who the company answers to, and how often. If the answer is a family, a foundation, or a structure that does not have to report a number every 90 days, that company can afford to build the thing that takes 7 years. If the answer is a quarterly earnings call, then every project inside that company is competing against the clock, and the projects that take 7 years lose that competition every single time, no matter how good the engineers are. The engineers are almost never the problem. Caterpillar has thousands of good ones, and the 255 proves they are still allowed to win when the company decides to let them. The permission slip is visible from the outside too, if you know where to look. It shows up in whether the newest model solves a problem operators were complaining about 5 years ago, or one that turned up in a slide deck last spring. The trait is not talent, it is patience, and patience is something the ownership structure grants. Which is why the companies taking ground from Caterpillar have so little in common on paper and everything in common underneath. A German family firm, a Japanese group, a Swedish division, a Finnish contractor's workshop. 4 countries, 4 engineering traditions, 1 shared license to think past next spring. The man who quoted the Liebherr patriarch was describing a permission slip. Every operator who has ever waited 3 days for a part already knows which of his suppliers has one.